Good morning, and thank you for tuning into the Andrew Tate Show, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We've got a great show for you guys today. Today we're going to be covering the FSU lawsuit amendments, the Project D1 proposals, Groundhog Day, and then make sure you stick around for later in the show when we'll be diving into the oddities of the day. Before we start, I would like to ask that you like and follow the show. Also, we get a number of questions from the viewers that come in during the show, so to ensure that your question gets read on the air, I ask that you use the tips and donation link with your question. The tips and donation link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Let's push your question at the top of the list so that I can see it, and it also just really helps the show.
All right, got one more thing that I'm going to add to that.
Yeah.
Also, please write a review. It really does help us.
Yes. Write a review as well.
Yeah, a nice review. If you're
nice
going to be haters do not apply.
Leave the negative reviews out of it, please.
Yeah, haters need not apply, but we need some positive reviews since we're a newer show.
Yeah. Good morning. Actually, I keep saying good morning to you, but it's not morning for you. So good morning to most of our viewers and good afternoon to you, Tate.
Well, technically it's 12:06.
Oh, so it's fairly new afternoon.
Okay, I've already had breakfast and I've already had lunch. So if you've already had lunch, it's afternoon.
Yeah.
It's totally weird telling you I've already had breakfast and lunch and it's still dark outside for you. That is weird.
Well, happy Friday. How are you?
I feel like today is a Monday.
Really?
So I have a lot of things for work. And so I've been looking at numbers and doing all this stuff for our shows and other shows and things like that. And I'm looking at it and it's just like, so today, this is the show is always my energy boost for the rest of the second half of my day. Mm-hmm. So
it feels very much like Friday to me. Woo, Friday.
All right. So let's do this, Miss Faith.
Yeah. All right. So Florida State plans to break away from the ACC. Florida State University Board of Trustees has amended its lawsuit against the Atlantic Coast Conference as it attempts to leave the conference by challenging the grant of rights media deal and the $130 million exit fee. The 59-page amended complaint filed Monday night in Leon County, Florida, and obtained by ESPN adds onto the allegations of chronic fiduciary mismanagement and bad faith that Florida State made in its first lawsuit filed on December 22nd. Florida State estimates leaving the conference would cost $572 million immediately. In the amendment, the university name drops former ACC Commissioner John Swofford and the deals made during the latter portion of his tenure, providing more evidence of the fiduciary irresponsibility that FSU is alleging. I'm
already. I got a little snippet of this, and I was like, let's because I know you have questions on this.
So I don't know much about this at all. When you sent me stuff to read on it, I read it all, but it's a very complicated and complex thing. So could you at least kind of just give a little synopsis of what's going on with FSU and the ACC?
Absolutely. Okay, so the ACC, you know how everyone has their television contract, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12. What killed the Pac-12 was their television contract. Pac-12 had maybe their best year ever, and the conference folded because of they couldn't get a television contract. So the ACC came up for their contract, for their television contract, and they negotiated. And when that contract was signed, they signed a contract that would take them with ESPN to 2036, and it worked out to each team was going to get right about between 35 and $40 million a year for all the way to 2036. When it was first signed, everyone was happy, including Florida State. Mm-hmm. It was this blockbuster deal. It was a long-term deal. Everything was great. And it's kind of like, you ever buy this, like you get this new outfit and it's like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. And then you go to school or you go to an event and somebody else shows up with an outfit 20 times better than yours. Mm-hmm. And you feel all of a sudden this outfit that you thought was just amazing kind of looks like you got it at Kohl's. So where they're wearing, the latest shoes, everything. Well, this is Florida State and some of the other ones. And this is not just Florida State. Florida State's just the one with the loudest microphone. They're the one that are upset the absolute most. What happened is the SEC signed their contract, and they're getting, I think it's like, don't quote me on the SEC's contract, but they're getting like 60, 70 million, where SEC is getting 35 to 40 million. And then the Big Ten came in and they dropped that hammer. They got their contract, which worked out to only 7 years, but it works out to the Big Ten got $8 billion. It's on a sliding scale, so it goes up. $80 to $100 million per school per year. All of a sudden, that contract that the ACC got, that was 35 to 40 million a year. You look around and the Big Ten could be making as much as 100 million, which is 2.5 times what they're getting. The SEC is getting almost double what you're getting. And Florida State, who looks at themselves on the level of the top teams in college football, and they're saying, wait a minute, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, even schools great schools, but Rutgers is a dumpster fire when it comes to college football. They're not major. Vanderbilt, these are low end schools in the SEC and the Big Ten, are making 2.5 times what they're making. When you see Vanderbilt and Rutgers getting $80 to $100 million a year, and you're Florida State, the big bad Florida State, or North Carolina, or the Miami Hurricanes, and you're like, we're not even getting half of what Vanderbilt is getting. In a world where name, image, and likeness has become a major thing, where schools have to be able to not only make money, but also be able to keep up with the Joneses as far as paying players. Mm-hmm. When you start paying players, the money that you're getting is less and less and less. So the AC's like, Florida State is like, hey, no, we're going to fall behind the Alabamas, Georgias, the Michigans, the Miamis, not the Miamis, but the Ohio States of the world. And they wanted to break the contract. What they really wanted to do is either one, break the contract with ESPN and renegotiate. Mm-hmm. ESPN is like, we're not renegotiating. You're locked into 2036. Mm-hmm. We're not going to change the contract. And why would you renegotiate and say, hey, we're going to give you extra billions on a contract that you're locked in? And Florida State wants out of the contract. But here's the thing. In their granted rights is all the teams in the ACC had to sign this contract, which means we're going to be locked into this contract for 2036. We're going to get the $1 billion+ dollars, but you can't break out of it. And if you do break out of it, 2 things you must do. Pay $130 million exit fee, mm-hmm. and you're going to forfeit your media rights, which is another $573 million. So in order for them to get out of their contract, it's about $700 million. That's more money than Florida State or North Carolina or Miami or Virginia has. Mm-hmm. So now they're talking about, they started looking into like private equity organizations that they could work out something. It's still way more than what these schools have to pay, but they're locked in the contract. They signed a contract. They were happy. So Florida State, who wasn't happy about it, they want uneven revenue share where they get a bigger share, and schools like Pitt and lower level schools, Boston College, gets less. Well, if you're Boston College or you're Pitt or you're some other school, are you going to be like, hey, I'm willing to take 10 million instead of the 40 million that I already have in my contract?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. No one's gonna do that. So Florida State wants out of the contract. Now, fast forward 1 year later, Florida State is undefeated. Mm-hmm. They're thinking they're going to play in the national championship game. And they look around and the votes come in because they lost their quarterback and because their schedule wasn't as strong. They don't make the college football playoffs. Now they're looking around and they're blaming the fact that they are in the ACC as the reason why they did not get into the college football playoffs. Well, I look at it a little differently. Florida State spent all last year saying that the ACC is not on the level with some of these other conferences, and that the competition and the contracts aren't the same, and they want out of this contract. Well, you spent the whole offseason last year saying that the ACC wasn't as good. Now you're upset because you didn't get into playoffs. This is where all this is coming. I know I'm bouncing around, but I'm filling you in. So what Florida State has done is they've went out and got a very smart legal team. And what they're trying to do is show in court that when they were negotiating this contract, they weren't negotiating good faith, that the former head of the ACC was more looking out for his son, and that they were trying to give his son a better deal with this other company that was part of this agreement, where they were supposed to be able to buy some of the rights from the Big Ten. Not Big Ten, but from ESPN. And they're saying that this other organization, this other broadcast company that was getting some of the rights, they're saying that this broadcast company was struggling, and there was a whole round of layoffs. But the son of the former ACC commissioner, he did not get laid off. As a matter of fact, he got promoted, and they ended up getting part of that ACC contract with the ESPN, buying some of the broadcast rights from ESPN. So Florida State is saying, hey, they did not negotiate, that the former commissioner did not negotiate in good faith. He was more looking out for his son instead of more looking out for what's best for the schools. And so that's what they're trying to go in for, on why they should be allowed to break this contract, because it wasn't negotiated on good faith. He was negotiating this contract looking out for his son, not Florida State and the other schools. That's what they're going for. It is a smart play, because I think that's the only way they're going to be able to break this contract. This contract is ironclad. Many other organizations have looked at their granted right and said, you're not getting out of this thing. But if they can go in and show that the former commissioner was negotiating not in good faith, or not they weren't 100% focused on the schools of the ACC, and that he was more focused on his son, then maybe they can use that to break the contract. If they break the contract, what this does is they're locked into 2036. By 2036, Big Ten, who is making $80 to $100 million, the Big Ten contract will have gone up, and then the Big Ten will also be able to negotiate another contract. The SEC will be able to negotiate another contract before the ACC is able to negotiate a new contract. So that next contract is going to be enormous, which Florida State and some of the other schools are looking at this and saying, by the time 2036 comes around, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, all could have new contracts, and we could end up like the Big 12, the Pac-12 with no contract, and these guys are scrambling. So they're trying to look out for themselves. I know I said a lot on this one, but this is everything in a nutshell. Does that make sense? Yes, I went long-winded, but there's a lot to this to explain all of this. What do you say on that? Because I said a lot.
Essentially, Florida State is upset with the amount of money that they're receiving right now.
Absolutely. That's all it comes down to, is that our contract, we thought it was awesome, but we realized after looking at the Big Ten and SEC, our contract sucks. And we're locked into this sucky contract to 2036. Mm-hmm. There it is.
Yeah. I mean...
And it's good to be a Big Ten or SEC fan right now and not in the ACC.
Yeah.
And then here's the thing. I know we're running long on this one. If they're able to break this contract, then schools like North Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, they all want to say, see you later, and they want to go to the Big Ten and the SEC. Clemson, like they were talking about, maybe like Clemson and maybe North Carolina going to the SEC, maybe Florida State, but then Florida State, Miami, Virginia possibly also want to go to the Big Ten. Well, everybody wants to get in this situation where they're either with the SEC or the Big Ten, because the big showdown that is coming up is everyone thinks it's going to go down to two conferences, SEC and the Big Ten, and everyone else is going to be left out, which leads us to our break, which goes into our next story.
Yeah.
Ooh, boy, it's Friday. I'm looking good, throwing some jabs. All right.
All righty. Well, Tate's already really done it for me. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be talking about the SEC and Big Ten, maybe leaving the NCAA.
I'm on fire, girl.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back. Earlier we were discussing Florida State and their plans to break away from the ACC, and now we're going to talk about could the SEC and Big Ten be leaving the NCAA. But before we dive into that, I just wanted to remind you that if you like the show and you want to leave a comment, you can send tips and donations to us at the tips and donation link, which is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Just put your question at the top of the list so that I can see it, and it also just really helps the show.
Excellent.
So,
All right, so we were on fire when we left the
We are
break
on.
here. Pretty much, you said it best. Uh, there was a guy who went to college, and he used to say it all comes down to CSC, and that CSC stands for Cash Sweet Cash.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it comes down to. It's
Yeah.
money.
Money, which I guess everybody is concerned about, especially big name companies and everything like that. You know, they want to
And
get
big name schools.
yeah, get as much money as they can. Alrighty, so could the SEC and Big Ten be leaving the NCAA? Excuse me.
I was gonna say, what were you gonna call that?
On December 5th, NCAA President Charlie Baker unveiled a somewhat radical proposal to modernize the college athletics model in an unprecedented way, recommending direct pay to athletes and the creation of a new subdivision. The Division I Board of Directors on Thursday charged the Division I Council with developing recommendations for a framework that would address the key elements included in the NCAA President Charlie Baker's Project D1 framework. Any legislative proposals recommended by the council will be brought forward to the board for final consideration. There are 3 key elements of framework that will be considered independently rather than as a package. Those are including allowing schools to offer enhanced educational benefits at any level they deem appropriate, allowing schools to enter into name, image, and likeness agreements with student athletes, and establishing a subdivision within Division I that would allow higher resource schools to provide additional financial support for college athletes in compliance with the Title IX requirements and create rules that may differ from other programs in Division I. So, essentially what it sounds like is they're trying to give the athletes as much money as possible instead of allowing the school to figure out how much money they want to give their athletes. That's what I got from that. Maybe.
Okay, there's a lot to this. I mean,
Yeah, lot.
I could take this entire segment, the next 2 segments, and Monday and Tuesday segment on
and
this
talk
one.
about it. Yeah.
Okay. The first thing is anything the NCAA is doing, puts out, it's always convoluted. The NCAA, I don't understand how they're thinking here. Something needs to be done. And by what they're proposing is to create a new division, a subdivision, but stay within Title IX. Well, Title IX is make things everyone, whatever the men get, the women should get.
Right.
And I'm all for Title IX. I'm going to make sure you understand before I make my statement. I am 100% for Title IX. But football and the rest of college sports are not on the same playing field. Anything that the women get for volleyball, the men should get, and vice versa. Softball, everything else, with the exception of football. And here is the reason why. As we were talking about the last segment, all the other Olympic sports, they're on par with each other. But football, college football creates billions of dollars. Like we were talking about, just college football alone, Ohio State, or even some small school like Rutgers, who isn't really a good football program. They're getting $80 to $100 million a year. That's what their television contract. That's not everything else, but that's their television contract. If you took every sport, men's, women, on campus, it wouldn't come within 1% of that. And that includes college basketball. Football is a different story. And schools are making decisions strictly on doing because of college football money. You look at West Virginia is in the Big 12, and all their schools, I mean, these programs, gymnastics and softball and all these other schools have to play most of their games on in the mountain time zone or in the West Coast because of the fact that West Virginia is chasing bigger dollars by playing in the Big 12. What does Stanford and Cal University have to do with anything with the Atlantic Coast Conference? But this year, they will be in the Atlantic Coast Conference playing all their away games on the East Coast and playing no away games on the West Coast because they want to be part of a major conference. This whole thing, what I'm getting to is these schools are making agreements so that because they're chasing the college football dollars. And so what the NCAA is proposing is that they break out these conferences where the major schools can actually pay their players whatever they want, but the minor schools, such as the Vanderbilts and the Rutgers, would still be in their conference, but not have to pay their players, but they're on a different scale. It's so convoluted what they're proposing that I don't think it will ever fly. What everyone is worried about is that the Big Ten and the ACC is going to come together one day sooner than later and decide that, you know what, these rules that we're governed by isn't working. And they already feel that way. And we're going to break away from the NCAA. And I think the proposal should be Chip Kelly's proposal than what this convoluted thing, what they're trying to do, which is try to do some revenue sharing and things of this nature. Chip Kelly's proposal is you break the college football off from everything else. You put everyone back into NCAA, fall under the NCAA, and make everyone regional. If you're in Georgia, you're playing in that Southeast region. If you're in Rutgers, you're playing in the Northeast region. So it makes it fair. But then for college football is a totally different entity where they bring in a commissioner, that's like the NFL. Players can actually, the schools, a Georgia player makes a contract with Georgia. They get paid XYZ amount of dollars, and they're locked in to play for Georgia, and they're employees of the University of Georgia. That's what should be proposed, so that these schools can now have one conference under one commissioner. All the rules for college football are here. All the other schools have their own set of rules under the NCAA. Now, players, and what I'm saying is, by making them employees, now you don't have the transfer portal being a madhouse, where if you're the starting quarterback for Georgia, you don't have to worry about, hey, after the spring game, someone could come in and offer Georgia's quarterback $2, $3, $4 million, and he's like, hey, I'm transferring, I'm not playing for Georgia this year. You're under contract for the University of Georgia for 4 years or whatever the contract is agreed upon. You're there. It's revenue sharing. It's a collective bargain agreement where they share that, like we were talking about the Big Ten, that $80 to $100 million. The players get to share in this. They get a portion of it. The university gets a portion of it. The players are locked in. They would still be able to do their name, image, and likeness contracts, but they become employees of that university. When you're an employee of that university, you have a paid contract, you get insurance, you get benefits, you get retirement, you get everything. So it benefits the players, it benefits the universities, and football falls under the same rules where there's a commissioner puts in rules for everyone in football. So it's fair and even. But players, the student athlete that's doing gymnastics or volleyball or baseball or lacrosse, they're not being affected because, hey, we want to be in a major conference. So I know we're on the West Coast, but we're going to play on an East Coast conference. And now every school, every player at that university has to suffer. It makes it fair. It makes it so that it's more of a professional type league. Does that make sense, or did I just babble a little bit here? Or
Oh yeah.
both?
It makes sense. It seems like college football really like just makes all the decisions for everybody else, and
Absolutely.
I don't find that fair. I mean, because
No, it's not
obviously
fair.
college football gets, especially like SEC and Big Ten, they get, a lot of screen time, and everybody wants to tune in and watch that. And so, of course, they're worried about how much money these people are going to be getting, and that those athletes are taken care of, whatever, whatever. But, there's other people in other sports that also like worked hard and do well in their sport, and they're not seeing the same, like,
Because they're different organizations. They're
yeah.
different. And here's the thing. You say college football is the one that's running things.
Hmm.
It's not college football. You want
No.
to know who's running things? It's the networks.
Hmm.
The Pac-12 was the conference of champions, a great, strong conference, one of the best conferences in the history of college football. But the Pac-12 is no longer, not because the level of play fell off. The level of play was at the highest it's been maybe ever.
Hmm.
But what happened was they didn't have a television contract. And if you don't have a major television contract, everyone's going to leave because that's where the money comes from. In
Hmm.
the last segment, what was the big battle? Florida State wants out of the SEC, the ACC, not because they don't like playing an Atlantic Coast Conference. They have played with Miami and these schools for years and decades. It's because their television contract is way too small and it's not on the level of the SEC and the Big Ten. The SEC and the Big Ten, the reason why everyone is gravitating and everyone wants to go to the ACC and the Big Ten is because everyone is making so much more. You're looking at some schools making 20, $30 million, where Big Ten schools are making 80 to 100 million. That's a massive difference when you're starting to think about having to pay players, pay administrative staff, pay coaches, plus afford to pay for other schools. By breaking it off, I think it protects some of the more, call them Olympic sports, so that Title IX can stay strong. Because what happens when, as you start, in order to compete, you have to pay more and more. Eventually, there's going to be a bunch of schools that say, you know what? We don't need women's volleyball. We don't need track. We don't need this. Let's get rid of everything and just do football and basketball. That's where it comes from. And the big worry is that the ACC, I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to look at this and say, we're tired of the Big Ten, the ACC, well, the NCAA rules, and we're
Hmm.
going to break off. We're going to pay our players, and we're going to run this organization the way it should be ran. And we're going to work together and create an organization. And some of these other conferences are worried that if that happens, why would ESPN, why would Fox, why would any of the networks want to pay for an ACC or a Big 12 conference or a Mountain West conference when you have this Super League, Big 10, SEC conference where everyone's watching? These schools would fall apart. They want to be a part of that Big 10, SEC. If that happens, the big worry is for these conferences is just like the ACC. Someone's going to blow up that conference like they did the Big 12 because the top schools are going to run to wanting to be in the SEC and the Big 10, which is what our first segment was about. How to get out of the ACC, break their granted rights so these schools, Miami, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia, can get to the SEC and the Big 10 because everyone is worried about the Big Ten and the AC and the SEC breaking off and all the money going to those schools. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I
I
I guess you don't really hear a lot about like what goes on behind the scenes of all of this, you know.
Yeah, unless you pay attention, a lot of times people don't know this. Think about, were you shocked to find out that the Pac-12 had imploded and gone away, and now all the Pac-12 schools are either in the Big 12 or the Big 10?
Yeah.
USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, these are West Coast schools, are now playing in a Midwest conference, which is known as the Big 10.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's crazy how schools, conferences like the Pac-12 are gone. If Florida State wins their lawsuit and are able to break the granted rights deal, all those schools I mentioned are going to run trying to figure out how to get to either the Big Ten or the SEC. Clemson will end up, and I guarantee you, Clemson will be an SEC school. Florida and Miami, Florida State and Miami will want to be a part of either one of both of those schools will end up in one or the other. They're too big. They have too big of a name to not end up in those schools. But schools like Boston College and Pittsburgh, Syracuse, they're going to end up either out on their own or in the Big 12. ACC will fall apart, just like we just saw with the Big 12, which is kind of sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, did I explain that? Is that a little?
No, yeah.
And I wasn't keeping track of the time, so I don't know if I ran long or if I'm short here.
You know, money. That's money. That's all.
I'm doing all my hip hop references. Cash rules everything around me. That's cream. So I went CSC and then I went cream.
Well, I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens and what teams are gonna go which way. You know,
it all comes down to if a judge rules. Goes right back to our first segment. This all ties in. These are two separate segments, but they're the same segment.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, if a judge in the state of Florida says, Florida State is right, this granted rights contract was put together unfairly to the schools, and the schools weren't represented properly, and they have the right to break, all hell's going to break loose, because there's going to be everyone, even the small schools are going to scramble. No one wants to end up like Oregon State and Washington State, which everyone in the Pac-12 scrambled, and there was two schools left behind with no future, Oregon State and Washington State. If you're an ACC school and you see that contract breaks, and let's say you are a Syracuse or a Pitt, you don't want to sit around and see what's going to happen. You're going to run to the Big 12 and try to get in with the Big 12, because the Big 10 and the SEC just may not take you. Mm-hmm. So everyone's going to, if that contract is broken and everyone can get out of it without paying almost $700 million, everyone's going to scramble to find a landing spot, and that conference will not exist.
Well, I guess we'll have to see what's going to happen. I mean,
see the things you learn on this show here.
Fascinating. Honestly, I think after this, I might go down a rabbit hole of.
Well, as a Georgia, a Georgia student alum, when you look at this, one thing you do realize is that, hey, Georgia's in good shape, because you're already in the SEC. Mm-hmm. You and Alabama are at the top of the SEC. No one's going to touch you. You don't have to worry about being an Oregon State. Right. To show you how bad this is, SMU, Cal, and Stanford, they joined an East Coast Conference school, the ACC, which is on verge, could blow up. Mm-hmm. SMU is saying, like, listen, we want to come to the ACC so bad that we won't take any money at all. Just take us. you can keep the money. Cal Stanford, like, hey, we won't take as much, we'll take a lot less just to be there. So those three schools are actually pretty much playing in the ACC for the next 7 to 10 years for free, just to be a part of a major conference. What happens to those schools if that contract gets broken?
Gosh. Complex thing.
and Faith was sitting there like, wow, I didn't even know this was going on.
I didn't.
Oh, it's quite major.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about Groundhog Day, which is today.
All right.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back. Earlier we were discussing could the SEC and the Big Ten be leaving the NCAA? Gosh, I did it again.
Wow, you did too, didn't you?
And now we're gonna be diving into today we're doing the show a little bit differently, kind of like two oddities in one day, but since today is Groundhog Day, I figured we would cover Groundhog Day a little bit, because I find Groundhog Day such a weird and fascinating
holiday. It is totally. Oh, if you are a foreigner and you come to America and you're like, ooh, it's Groundhog Day, they look at you like, Hedgehog Day? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Who wants a hog?
Okay, so Punxsutawney Phil prepares to make his annual Groundhog Day winter weather forecast. Punxsutawney Phil's winter weather forecast will be announced sometime after sunrise Friday, which is today, in Gobbler Knob, the scene of the country's...
What did you just say?
Gobbler Knob. Gobbler Knob.
That's the name. Okay. Let's move on.
The scene of the country's largest and most well-known Groundhog Day celebration. The annual event is a tongue-in-cheek ritual in which Phil's handlers, members of a club with roots in the late 19th century, reveal whether the groundhog has seen his shadow, ushering in 6 more weeks of winter weather, or hasn't, predicting early spring-like weather. About 10,000 people have made their way in recent years to Punxsutawney, where festivities begin in the dead of night and accumulate in the midwinter forecast. Phil predicts more winter far more often than he sees in early spring. Not a bad bet for February and March in western Pennsylvania. A federal agency took a look at his record last year and put his accuracy rate at about 40%.
Punxsutawney Phil, he kind of sucks.
Yeah, so
40%. I could do that.
Yeah.
I will step out there right now and tell you if I see my shadow or not. I bet y'all get at least 40.
Let's see what the wind's like today. The tradition of celebrating the midpoint between the shortest day of the year on the winter solstice and the spring equinox goes back many centuries in European farm life. There are more than a dozen active groundhog clubs in Pennsylvania, some dating back to the 1930s, and weather predicting groundhogs have appeared in at least 28 United States and Canadian provinces.
Okay.
So my thing about Groundhog Day that I never understood is if he sees his shadow and gets scared of his shadow, that means 6 more weeks of winter.
Okay.
I feel like if he sees a shadow, that means the sun is out, which means it's not cloudy and the clouds are not blocking the sun rays to warm up the day. So wouldn't it mean if he saw his shadow, that would mean that spring is closer than winter?
Okay. See, here is a generation gap right here. This is where I grew up, where Rankin and Bass, the same people that made Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, made a television program for kids about this. And if it wasn't for that, I'd be like, just like you, like, okay, so they explain that it's a magic shadow and it has nothing to do with if it was sunny out or not.
Oh, it's like the movie Jack Frost.
Yes.
Yeah.
The same people. You're talking about the old one?
Yeah.
Yes. Same people that made that one also made I don't remember what it was called, but yes. So I think it's crazy. I think it's the dumbest festival ever. Remember maybe a couple episodes ago or so, I talked about I've been to Georgia for games. I've been to Tuscaloosa for college football games, and Ohio State, Michigan, Miami, Ohio State, Pro Bowls, everything else. Who in the world are taking a vacation like, oh, I got to go see Pachitani Phil and if he's going to see his shadow or not? You said tens of thousands of people show up there.
Yeah.
That's tens of thousands of people that do not have a life. They need to go on Bumble. They need to get them a date. They need to spice up their marriage. They need to do something because there needs to be more excitement in their life than going to see if a groundhog's going to see his shadow. Am I wrong?
I mean, everybody has their thing, their niche, you know?
Single Faith jumps on, I remember, like, let's say Plenty of Fish, or jumps on whatever dating app this says you're out there. And it's like looking for a date for Groundhog Day. See Pachitani Phil. Does he see his shadow or not? Picnic, lunch, Pachitani Phil. Are you going on that date? Honestly, or are you thinking he's a serial killer?
Honestly, no. I think for our first date, that would be a little weird. To travel across a bunch of states to go see the Groundhog for Groundhog Day. I would definitely think that was a little weird and would say no. But have you ever seen a groundhog? Oh, they are the cutest things ever. They're so cute.
You know what? The heck with the groundhog. I'll take a hedgehog.
Okay, so the reason this specific Groundhog Phil is such like a big deal, the 1993 blockbuster film Groundhog Day, starring Bill Murray, fueled the interest for Punxsutawney Phil and inspired informal observations far and wide. I've never seen Groundhog Day, so I don't know.
I was going to say, I was way before that. And that was still a big deal even when I was a kid. I was a kid. I'm 54. So I'm a lot older. And that was a big deal even back then. And as a little kid in the late 70s, early 80s, it was still a big deal. That was before Bill Murray and all that. And it makes no sense. I just don't. And have you seen the outfit they put him in? He has a little vest on, a little hat and everything.
Yeah, it's so cute.
You're going to be, in a few more years, Faith, you're going to be one of those people vacationing. You and your boyfriend are going to go on a road trip to see Punxsutawney Phil, aren't you?
Before I die, yes, I would love to see the groundhog come out of his little burrow and predict the weather.
Shut up.
I live in Georgia. And I don't know if you know how Georgia weather is. Whether or not this
Yes.
guy sees his shadow does not affect anybody that lives in this state, because
At all.
Georgia's weather is so bipolar. One day it'll be freezing cold, and then it'll be hot, and then it'll rain, and then it'll be cold again, and then later in the day it'll rain when it said it wasn't going to rain, and yada yada yada. So,
Fake.
yes.
He's at a 40% clip. That means 60% of the time he's wrong. So
40% honestly is kind of high in my opinion. I was kind of impressed. I was like, 40%, that's a higher number than I thought it was gonna be.
Listen, all right, here's the rule. It's early in the morning there.
Mm-hmm.
Your boyfriend's sleeping. Just wake him up, throw him outside on the front porch, and make him stumble. If you see a shadow, then there you go. You know what's gonna happen. Okay.
That is. I'll start a new one.
He'll stumble. He'll be in his boxers and a t-shirt, and he'll stumble out on the porch, and he'll fall down. And he gets up, and you see a shadow, and it's like, all right,
back to your burrow. Back to your burrow.
Back to the
more weeks of winter.
Wow.
Yeah,
and guess what? You do that pay-per-view, I'm watching.
I know, honestly, poor little Groundhog, though. I will say that. But apparently he has a nice little home that they've made for him. Phil lives in a customized space beside the Puxatawny Memorial Library, with a window where library patrons can check out his burrow. So you're saying
he has a little hog manor?
Yeah, so he has like a little window, and you can go and look at him when he's not out and about, you know? But what makes this even funnier is back in 2009, library workers said Phil had somehow managed to escape 3 times, climbing into the library ceiling and dropping into offices about 50 feet away. He wasn't injured, though.
He was tired of all you weirdos looking in the window and showing up at his house. Hey, you see a shadow yet? It's like, I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm gone. If you kept showing up at my house and looking in my window and wanting to know if I saw my shadow, I'm like, I'm out of here. Bye.
He's a groundhog. He's so cute. Cute little rodent. Rodent? Is he a rodent? Mammal?
I think he is a rodent.
Rodent?
No, they're all mammals. Rodents are mammals too.
Oh, are they? Okay.
But
yeah,
yes.
that's true. So cute. Maybe I will. Maybe next year that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Puxatawny, Pennsylvania.
Oh, no. I say wake your boyfriend up and throw him out in the front yard. I think that's way better.
I don't think he'd be too happy with that. I think I'd be sleeping on the couch for a couple of days.
Listen, live stream it. Just live stream it. We can use this live stream. Just push him out there and see if you see his shadow. It's a family tradition. Sorry, Faith.
I'd be like, sorry, Tate, maybe do it.
All right.
Wow. Okay.
That concludes Puxatawny Phil in his shadow.
So happy Groundhog Day to everybody out there. We're gonna take a quick break.
And don't come after me, guys. I'm not really a Puxatawny Phil hater. I'm sure he's a really nice groundhog at Hog Manor, and I wish him nothing but the best, okay?
All right, guys. Well, we're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to be diving into our oddities of the day.
All right.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back. Earlier we were discussing Groundhog Day, and now we're going to be diving into our oddities of the day. Before I read this off, Tate sent me this one, and he said he wanted to do it for Friday's show.
Okay, here's the thing. I didn't think you were actually going to do this one. So
no, I think it's great. I think it's hilarious.
So I'll focus on Hog Manor and Pachitani Phil. Wow. Okay. I'm semi-prepared. I saw the title.
You didn't read it?
I just sent it. No, I did not. So I want
okay.
Hook a brother up with the details. Okay. I need the details.
Okay. So a Sunday school teacher has been convicted of murdering her husband over a pornography habit. An Arkansas nurse in Sunday school was sentenced to 16 years in prison on Tuesday for murdering her husband after discovering he had paid for porn. Patricia Hill, a nurse of 50 years, shot and killed her husband Frank Hill, 65, in a shed outside their Pine Bluff home last July after the two argued about his pornography use. Hill's attorney, William O. James Jr., said that the couple had been married for 17 years and she kept finding pornography stashed and hidden. James said Frank Hill would often watch pornography in the shed, which he described as his man cave. Patricia Hill, a religious woman who taught Sunday school, felt like the devil was in that shed, James said. Hill, 69, filed for divorce in May 2018, but she withdrew the papers after he begged her to reconsider. 2 months later, after Hill discovered that her husband had purchased a pornography channel on their TV, she confronted him. James said Hill did not mean to kill her husband. She first shot him in the leg and then fired a warning shot that struck him in the head. She said she didn't really remember getting the gun, James said. And then Hill immediately called police. On the 911 call, Hill said, "I need police and an ambulance. My husband's been shot." The dispatcher asked, "Who shot him, ma'am?" She replied, "I did." Hill was originally charged with capital murder, but was found guilty of second-degree murder.
Okay, first off, I fired a warning shot and I struck him in the head by accident.
Yeah.
I'm calling shenanigans on that one. You know, come on.
Yeah, I've never shot a gun, but I feel like no matter how bad like the kickback is of whatever you're shooting, if you're aiming for the leg and you somehow end up shooting him in the head, I don't.
Okay, Faith, my first question is, if you have a gun and you want to fire a warning shot, what direction do you shoot that warning shot? You've never fired a gun. What direction do you fire? Give me a direction.
Away from the person, you know?
Up in the air.
No, because it falls back down. You don't shoot up in the air because the bullet always comes down. You don't know where that bullet's going to go. Never shoot up in the air.
Up in the air. You shoot up in the air.
I know that. You never shoot up in the air because luck will have it coming down on your head and then you're dead.
But guess what? Then second-degrry murder. Let's say she shoots up in the air. He goes way up and then way back down and shoots him in the head. Then she gets a pass. No. First off, Sunday school teacher shoots and kills her husband.
Yeah, what a great headline.
For being in the she shed.
It's a man cave. It was his shed. My thing is, you go into your little hidey hole and watching pornography. That's a thing in itself. That's really gross. You go in your little shed to watch pornography, like that's a problem on its own.
There's some creep factor already. She shed, hidey hole, man cave. That's the first thing. And listen, for anyone who, wife, I am a happily married man.
Mm-hmm.
At the point you come up with that it's time to kill me for whatever habit it is, just give me my walking papers. Hey, husband, I'm thinking about killing you. It's time. Thank you very much for telling me. I'll be folding my stuff up and putting this. I'm out of here. You do
Thank
not
you
have
for
to
your
kill
time
me.
and consideration.
Thank you for your service. I'm out. Deuces.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it really that bad? See, I'm trying to keep this on the wholesome level and not take this down the hidey hole. So I'm trying to keep this wholesome. But if you have that big of a problem, leave him. It doesn't matter. She said she was going to file for divorce and he begged her to not take it.
Yeah.
First off, if it comes, I think if she would have told him, you know what? This habit is getting to the point where I'm thinking about taking a shotgun and shooting you. He'd be like, never mind. Go ahead. I'll sign the papers and we move on.
Mm-hmm.
What do you give me more? Give me your thoughts on this whole thing.
I just want to say, before I say what I say, I would never shoot and kill my partner over anything, I don't think.
Will you push him out on the porch so you can see his shadow, at least?
No. But I will say, I get it a little bit.
What?
I get no. I don't get her shooting him. I don't think that was a good decision. But
I'm getting the vapors over here.
I get being that upset about it because she did continuously tell him, I don't like that you're doing this. Stop doing it. And then she went to file for divorce, and he was like, no, please don't. Please reconsider. I'll stop doing it. And then he doesn't. So, no, I don't think she should have shot him. I don't even think a gun should have been involved in this conversation at all. But I understand her feelings about it.
Oh my God.
Her feelings are a little bit valid in my opinion.
No. Listen, if it's that bad, and my man, I wish he should have called me up before getting shot. Dude, why is he ordering channels? They have smartphones.
It's the 21st century. You can get that stuff for free now.
Yes. Dude, is his habit that bad? How much is he spending on this? He's just trying to wave his freak flag a little bit. I'm sorry. Oh,
you said it. I didn't.
It's sad. But how many? Okay. He got caught once.
Yeah.
Didn't they say he's ordering it on TV or something like that?
Let's see. Frank Hill, he would often watch it in the shed in his man cave, and she felt, because of her religious views, she felt like the devil was in that shed. And
I think the devil was in her. Annie Oakley over here.
And then 2018, she filed for divorce but withdrew the papers because he begged her to reconsider, and then 2 months later she discovered that he had purchased a channel on their TV.
Okay,
so
he purchased a channel. Okay, how about this? I'm gonna walk into the man cave. That was the last straw. You're out of here. I'm out of here. Whatever. Not turn into Ma Baker and just shoot him. Come on.
Like, who the heck is Mom?
Am I right? She didn't have to turn into Annie Oakley out there.
Like I said, I don't think a gun should have been involved in the situation at all. But I mean, it's a little like a stab in the back when you ask your partner not to do something, it doesn't make you comfortable, and they say they won't, and then they do it again and again. So it's an upsetting thing to deal with. And so I'm saying I understand her feelings a little bit, but I don't think a gun should have been involved at all.
Faith?
Yes.
If I do something on this show that you do not like, and you're like, you know what, Tate, I'm giving you one warning. I'm bringing a gun next time. We're not doing the show anymore.
Okay. One.
We're not doing the show anymore.
One.
We're done.
What would a gun do in this situation? You live in Europe. I live in the United States. What am I going to do?
You are a very determined woman. If I know that you are thinking about shooting me, I am no longer in Portugal. I am in Lithuania somewhere.
I don't know where in Portugal you live. You think I'm just going to travel around Portugal trying to find you? I'm going to shoot
It's
you?
not a big enough country. It's easy to find me. No.
That sounds like a lot of time, money, and effort that I don't want or have.
Well, I was going to tie it into another episode. Maybe the restaurant that you were working at, it became automated with robots and you have free time now. Tying that in from last show.
Yeah, I might have free time, but I won't have any money.
Yeah. But I'm sorry. Like, whenever there's a spouse that comes up unalive, a lot of times it's always the other person that does it. I say, if it gets to the point where I want to kill my wife, oh no, I like freedom too much. I'm leaving.
I think it's time for some therapy if you're considering killing yourself.
Well, if you're at the point where you shot him in the leg and then your warning shot is to the head, I mean,
yeah, I'm sorry.
I know this is really rough.
I think the warning shot should have been shooting him in the leg.
Yes, that was the one. Pinky toe. Shoot him in the pinky toe. Not even the leg, the pinky toe. Also, warn your brother not to watch this segment. This segment is NC-17 and up. This segment is not for the young at heart.
Not for children.
And for all you women out there and men that are thinking about going into your husband's she shed, just get divorce papers.
Please don't shoot your husband. Please just don't ever shoot your spouse. Please don't ever try to kill your spouse. If you're having those thoughts, get yourself into some therapy and file for divorce.
Walk away. Walk away. Do not smoke anybody. That's all I'm saying. That's my Mr. Rogers moment of the day. Do not shoot your spouse for buying.
Please don't bring Mr. Rogers' name into this conversation.
He's over there. He's watching his show. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and then it went south.
Don't shoot your husband. Alrighty, guys. Ooh, okay. I just turned my light off.
Dude, the lights are. Okay, this show is over. Faith hasn't even turned out the lights. Like, we're out of here. See ya.
Sorry, but it is time to close out the show. So I guess lights are off, so it's time to go.
Maybe that guy should have turned the lights off in his in his man cave. He'd be still alive right now.
Oh, maybe.
Wow.
Well, guys, that's the end of our show. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend.
Happy Groundhog Day.
Happy Groundhog Day. Thank you for tuning in to the Andrew Tate Show presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content updates. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you on Monday.
Bye-bye.